No prison time for convicted former Louisville police officer Brett Hankison in the Breonna Taylor case. That is the recommendation from the U.S. Department of Justice, which has seen a major shift in priorities under the Trump administration. Instead, the DOJ is pushing 3 years of supervised release. Isaiah Kim Martinez, senior journalist Alyssa Newton, have been following this case for us. Isaiah, you were there when he was found guilty earlier in the year. And so why is the DOJ getting involved, and what does it mean?
Well, Connie, this is a very unique case,
Okay.
right? Normally, you see the prosecutors, who won in this case, by the way, recommend a higher sentence, a stiffer sentence, and then you'll see typically a lot of times the defense ask for leniency, and then the judge, of course, makes the final call. But under President Trump, this DOJ and Hankison's attorneys are essentially on the same page.
Mr. Hankison, do you have any comment to this?
Brett Hankison, the only former Louisville police officer convicted in the Breonna Taylor case, may not face any time in prison. That's if the Department of Justice under President Donald Trump gets what it's asking for. Can you explain to me your reaction to hearing the DOJ saying we only want supervised release?
Well, I think it's not surprising because we know the history of America. You know, justice really means the black community, just us.
Lamont Collins, head of the Roots 101 African American Museum in downtown Louisville, speaks to me from their Breonna Taylor exhibit.
It was done 6 years ago.
In a new memo filed this week, DOJ attorneys with the Civil Rights Division only recommended 3 years supervised release, a far cry from the several years in prison the government was expected to push for. John Mattingly, the retired LMPD sergeant who was shot in the leg by Taylor's boyfriend that night, calls this development refreshing for the city and law enforcement.
You even saw a line in there that basically said the process is the punishment. And so I think, you know, Brett's been through hell and back.
In November, a federal jury found the former cop guilty of using excessive force when he fired 10 times into the side of Taylor's apartment.
I think what we see in America, the changing of the guards, the changing of the president, the changing of the Congress, the things that people want power, but not necessarily power with justice, just power. And power can be corrupt.
And we saw this back when they first started, when they dropped all the lawsuits against cities for the consent decrees, including Louisville. So you knew we were moving in the right direction as far as at least trying to get on the right path back to common sense.
At Hankison's sentencing on Monday, the Trump-appointed federal judge, Rebecca Grady Jennings, will determine what time, if any, he will serve.
This is a unicorn situation where you have a trial and then you have kind of a sea change in how the department views things.
Former federal prosecutor, Louisville attorney Brian Butler, tells me it's rare for a federal judge to go above a prosecutor's recommendation, but it does happen.
If she were to sentence him to prison, then the Department of Justice will have to decide whether they want to seek to commute that sentence or even to seek a pardon for him. Whether they are willing to do that or not, I don't know.
I asked well-known poet and activist Hannah Drake if she found this news surprising. She told me no. Quote, "It's the American way." The first time federal prosecutors tried Hankison, it ended in a mistrial, but the second time, a federal jury found Hankison guilty of violating Breonna Taylor's civil rights. That's the case we just talked about. Next door to Taylor that night in 2020, 3 neighbors were home, including a pregnant woman. Hankison's shots went through their apartment, but he was found not guilty of violating their rights. And then, of course, in 2022, back in 22, Hankison was acquitted of his state wanton endangerment charges. Connie.
All right, Isaiah, thank you so much. And Mayor Craig Greenberg voiced his opposition today, saying, quote, "Former officer Brett Hankison was convicted of a serious federal crime. I believe his actions warrant a serious prison sentence." And Councilwoman Shamika Parrish-Wright released this statement saying Breonna Taylor's rights were violated in an intimate and terrifying way, saying, quote, "One day in prison for a lifetime of moments Breonna Taylor's family will never share with her is a devastating slap in the face. Brett Hankison was not acting alone the night Breonna was killed. His actions and those of others led not only to the loss of Breonna's life, but to the permanent emotional and psychological harm inflicted on Kenneth Walker," end quote.